Hello and welcome to our review of Invincible Season 2. We're going to be going over the last 4 episodes that just released, and this will be the first episode of our new show, Television Tuesday. This is an offshoot of our show, Studio Cinema Saturday, where we rate and review movies here on YouTube at Studio 24. We're going to go ahead and start this review with just some spoiler-free thoughts on Invincible Season 2, or at least the second half of that. So, what did you guys think of Invincible?
First impressions, I loved it. The first season, just to start off, I thought it was incredible. Probably one of my favorite animated shows. Season 2 only tops that and expands it tenfold with the enjoyment.
I think I share those thoughts. Season 2 was really good. I think it stuck the landing. I'm excited to see what comes next.
And Season 2 comes at you with a lot of the story that you've been waiting for. We see all of these plots set up, like the Mars plot, the Sequids, Langstrom's plot comes back, Omni-Man's plot, the plot for his guilt extends. You have a lot of these things that we've been waiting for, and they're all resurfacing. And I think that's why Season 2 hits the mark so hard for me, and why I'm just so blown away by it just a little bit. I said to them earlier that this is probably my favorite superhero show. Not only ongoing, but maybe ever.
I agree with Kel, and this is just pure superhero action adventure with like the human emotion at its core. A lot of characters' actions are determined by emotion and feeling. A lot of Mark's motivation in this season is based on how his dad left him at the end of season 1. And I think something to point out about this show, and a strength of it, and part of what makes it such a classic superhero tale, is it really capitalizes on the serialization from like old-timey comic books of just continued storytelling. It's a season 2, but it's not like most TV shows season 2s, where season 1's plot threads are wrapped up, same characters, new plot. This is a continuation of season 1 with new things being introduced, of course, because it's a new season, but a lot of the plot threads from season 1 are still very active.
Speaking on the serialization of things, the story sort of calls to that as well whenever the last thing that Nolan tells Mark is, go find my books, read them, and his books are these novelization comic book sort of deals of his adventures, and we get a little bit of expanded lore on the universe of Invincible. And speaking as someone who hasn't read the comic books, it's opened and kind of broadened the world and done a little bit of world building, and it's making me hypothesize and the gears turn a little bit about where we're headed and what other things can play into the overarching story and harm Viltrumites.
Hey, we're going to go ahead and move into some spoilers here because I kind of like some of the things that you just brought up. The mid-season finale tells us Omni-Man's books have information that we need. What it ends up being is that he's kind of logged a lot of accounts of fights and civilizations and planets that he had a hard time against. And what this leads me to think is that Omni-Man is showing Mark, hey, I haven't been invincible this entire time. Viltrumites aren't invincible. There were places I went and people I met who could still go toe-to-toe with me. He reads some and gives it to Alan, who is this space being. He travels around. He could maybe even locate some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So, I just really like some of the stuff that's set up. You stop thinking about it, and then it comes right back. And I know no one's books are going to do that,
Just tying back in, there are some threats now.
There are many threats now. Even though Invincible is so powerful, even though the Guardians of the Globe are so powerful, we still see threats all over. I personally thought Langstrom was going to be a nobody. I thought, even if he does resurface, Mark has just got the skill set to beat his ass as soon as he shows up. And then Langstrom shows up and gives you one of the most stressful scenes in the entire show so far, when he's not allowing Mark to touch him. He's sending him through dimensions. He breaks Debbie's arm with a bit of the scene where the music cuts and all you can hear is Debbie panting and Oliver crying. is stressful. You just see these threats pop up, and they end up being more of a threat than you thought they were going to be.
Everything is challenging Mark. There's always something.
I think Debbie actually kind of echoes that at the end of the show with her and Mark kind of at the roof of the house after everything with Angstrom has wrapped up Mark's back. She's like, everything's different now, isn't it? It's never going to be the same again. We'll never get near a sense of normal from, the beginning of season 1. And I think it's true. I think everything from here on out is going to be different for Mark. Like, we see kind of, to throw it back to part 1 of season 2, Mark trying to reestablish normalcy. And then part 2 of season 2 is just all of that. Reinforcing, no, we can't get that after what happened in season 1. It's irreparable change has happened to all of our characters at this point, and there's no going back. And I think at the end of season 2, Mark's kind of choice to quit college and stuff, it's a big choice for him because he wanted that so bad. But with Angstrom, and I think that fight with Anissa and all of that, it's really shifted his view to where he's like, no, I just got to get better. There's threats like Angstrom, who personally threaten me, and there's the Viltrumites, who are coming for Earth.
Anissa is possibly the scariest woman we've met in the show.
Probably the most powerful character so far. If I had to guess.
Quite possibly. That large monster in the water that Mark was fighting and semi-losing to, that she just kind of flies through, moves so fast that she brushes the blood off of her suit, and it's just like...
unfazed.
That took me all of half a second to fix. She actually makes somewhat of a case for Viltrum's takeover. Like, problems like this wouldn't happen if you just let Viltrum take over your world and kill whoever they want.
Yeah, and I think part of the Viltrums, we saw kind of part of their backstory that Nolan Omni-Man explained in season 1 is only the strong survive. So I think that's going to be a big thing going forward. And like you mentioned in the books, to throw it back to that, I think Omni-Man, Nolan, is not only trying to say there are other people who can go toe-to-toe with Viltrumites. I think it's to kind of say that those other people who can go toe-to-toe with Viltrumites are similar to you, Mark, and that Viltrumites fight for power, for strength. We see Mark unhinged in the finale. Unhinged because of the threat to his mother and his now half-brother Oliver. We see him just let loose. And he wants to control that, but I think part of, why he was losing that fight with the sea monster and why he lost that fight with Anissa is because he's scared of his power because of what his dad did. And I think part of those books is to show him there are other people like you who fight for more than just strength and power. And I don't think Mark sees that yet. I don't think he sees it yet, and he won't for a while.
Season 2, I feel like, is going to end up being this thing where you look back and you're like, yeah, the end of season 1 and the whole reveal that Omni-Man was working for the Viltrumites and that he was on a mission, that is going to seem like nothing compared to the sacrifices we see Mark make in season 2. He's now lost his girlfriend, he's quit college. You get like barely any scenes where he's hanging out with his best friend in season 2.
William, yeah.
We are just always seeing Mark be dragged away from his personal life, be a superhero. We look back and you're like, if this sacrifice wouldn't have happened, he would have never made the adjustments it took to change the whole course of the show and to change him. When Alan approached him and was like, hey, you've got to come with me and fight for the Coalition. And then the Anissa thing happens right after that, and you're like, oh, he's going to desperately wish that he would have just went with Alan because he ended up losing all the stuff he wanted to stay behind for anyways.
It feels a little bit like an Empire Strikes Back sort of choice. It's like you can stay with Yoda and hone your skills and get stronger, or you can go and try to save your friends now.
Yeah.
But you're missing the big picture here.
Mark just so desperately tries to hang on to all of the stuff he loves in this season.
It's the age-old superhero debate, and it's something that has always existed in this show because of Mark's morality, but it's come to a head at the end of this season as, like you said, he's just so powerful. He's reached this point of, I can defeat these people, but they're probably just going to keep coming unless I kill them.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to have to face that reality.
There are two like crossovers during the episode where he meets what would be Spider-Man. I think this is super interesting. They have their own little like Spider-Man that they've made, and then they use Professor Ock, which we know is Doc Ock, and we also know in the comic books around this time he actually did cross over with Spider-Man. They just can't get the rights to that. And then we see at the end where he's kind of talking to Batman. He's talking to these two characters from Marvel and DC who have an extremely similar moral code to him. I literally see Mark Grayson as a Peter Parker Spider-Man and a Dick Grayson Nightwing mixture. And then you add like your Superboy powers, and you've got Mark Grayson Invincible. I think it's cool that they reference these other two superheroes at the end. I think they really line up, and that's where your inspiration comes from. But he is in this period of, do I have to lean the other way in order to win?
And something they were probably even hinting at is like, I thought you were stronger. That's the title of the episode. It's such a powerful line that it's like, Mark still doesn't know the bounds of how strong he is.
Let's go through and talk about just some of the events that happened throughout this last season. We start, and Mark's still on Thraxa. He's kind of abandoned here. After the Viltrumites took his dad, and they're obviously sending him to prison, he's stuck with Ray Seahorn's character, Nolan's new wife.
Nolan's alien wife.
Yeah, and eventually, they get him sent back home, but it's there that he sees his dad in a new light again.
Yeah.
His dad is kind of redeemed because of the Thraxa plot, and it's insane to get there so fast, too, because the end of season 1 leaves you hating Nolan.
He's just evil.
And then you immediately go into, he feels terrible for what he did, and he is truly conflicted with who he is and what he's doing, and with the Thraxa arc, he kind of chooses his son. I love that season 2 kind of starts with redeeming Omni-Man.
And ends with, I would say, a confirmation on that redemption. We have the plot of Alan trying to bring Omni-Man out of the prison, and Omni-Man saying that he misses Debbie. There is a full circle change of the character that's occurring, and I think we're only going to see that more as we move into season 3.
Quick prediction. Y'all think Debbie and Nolan are going to get back together? I'm going to go with no. And I think it would hurt a little bit of her character progression that she's had since Nolan left.
I think it's something that the show's going to address, and I think they'll meet again.
Yeah.
But I think maybe we can reach some catharsis there for the two of them, perhaps, especially for Debbie, because there's still just some unhealed wounds from the previous season.
She's raising his son that's not even hers right now.
There is that.
It's not even her son. The only tied to it is it's Mark's brother.
But Nolan also fathered this child, so there's also that thread too.
Yeah, it's a very complicated thread.
I think they will come back together, but they won't, reunite like they once were husband and wife or anything like that. I think there'll definitely be a moment of catharsis between them where it's like he comes back and he's definitely different. I think maybe Debbie will see that, or she won't, and they'll have to have a whole different story arc. But I think there will have to be a moment where Omni-Man admits, you actually weren't a pet. I was just stuck in my ways. I think this season gives a new kind of look into the end of season 1, where the reason he goes so hard in the paint is he's like, I have to, or I'm going to fail my mission, because I actually am connected to these people. Almost like he's forcing himself to just disconnect from his humanity that he earned in his time there.
Himself and Mark are very similar. They're both very conflicted characters. Omni-Man has gone too far the other way, and he's having thoughts about going back, and Mark is in the polar opposite direction, but of course is being tormented with the thought of hurting people and killing people and causing destruction that he didn't intend, and just having to go that far to, save the day in the end.
So Mark gets back from Thraxa with his brother. He introduces Oliver to Debbie, says hi to his girlfriend before he has time to do absolutely anything. the Sequid invasion starts happening, from the Mars plot that was literally from one of the first couple episodes. And they legitimately put our heroes in a tough situation.
They send all the heavy hitters of the Guardians to... And this is a moment where Mark really steps up, because Immortal's leading the team, and he's doing the best he can. But Immortal is very stuck in his ways. He's stubborn. He doesn't trust Mark because of Nolan.
Which is reasonable.
It's reasonable. I mean, this moment where basically Mark goes to Immortal and is like, we have to trust each other in this situation. You know I can get the job done here. You know what you can do. We're all here as a team today. Let's leave the distrust behind, or else we're all going to die here, and then the Sequids are going to get to Earth.
And I loved how, what's his name?
Shakesmith.
He's protecting them while Robot is constructing the device that, will knock the Sequids off. And then they also get Adam, Eve, and Robot. Two of our heavy hitters are now mind controlled, but then thankfully that wasn't a huge area of contention.
And then while that's going on,
Rex.
Back on Earth.
Lizard League, yeah.
They're doing something, breaking into like a government facility to find some sort of technology. You have, I think it's Shrinking Ray, Duplicate, and Rex are the 3 Guardians left behind.
Rexplosion.
Per Cecil's orders. And they get sent. And then it's like, oh, it's the Lizard League. They're a bunch of bums anyways. And we've seen the Lizard League before. And they're
usually
every
a joke.
time they show up, they're a joke. Yeah, they get dispatched easily. And then this time, they get squad wiped, basically.
Like you said, it was very reminiscent of what Nolan did to the original Guardians in season 1.
Yes.
Before you know it, there's a gun to the back of Rex's head.
Yeah.
Totally beat. You're thinking, oh, they're going to give him a chance to live.
And he's
for some
missing
intel.
a hand at this point.
He's already missing a hand, and boom. Trigger goes off. Hole through Rex's head. He hits the floor. I'm shocked while watching this.
We have cutaways in between this, I'm pretty sure.
We have cutaways to back to the Sequid plot.
They make you think he's dead, and this is after Duplicate's been ripped in half and Shrinking Ray's been eaten by the big lizard guy.
Not just, all of her copies are dead. Shrinking Ray is inside of the big dude because she tried to shrink down and then go big. And...
Before you know it, Rex gets back up.
Yes!
And finishes the job against the Lizard League. Hits the ground, and boy's put down in the hospital. And then you go into the plot where, days later, he gets up out of the hospital, goes back into the field, and that's when he realizes he's woken up with some upgrades.
Yeah.
He ends up having the big hand cannon in his arm that he uses to defeat that monster.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also just given him this new perspective on life. He feels bad about his past relationships, and he feels like he's been a douchebag all this time.
Mm-hmm.
And he now also sees that his life is very much at risk whenever he goes out there and is a superhero, just because he's not invincible.
Right, and this is something where me and Dalton both weren't really crazy about Rex for the longest time, and then once
he was the team shitbag. For
absolutely. This back half of season 2 makes his character extremely more dynamic, and
he steps up.
Yeah, and is ultimately a more likable character now.
We didn't really talk about how Alan the Alien comes back bigger and better. Literally.
Finds out that his boss that he's been working for actually is a Viltrumite.
Like the original Viltrumite rebel, essentially.
Alan's kind of pumped up about this. Not only has this guy made me bigger, he's a Viltrumite. I've never been able to fight a Viltrumite before. They wiped the floor with me to put me in this condition, to where I had to regain all this strength, which is just hilarious.
And you get to see something I like is, after he goes to Earth and gets the books from Mark, he goes back into space and he finds the Viltrumite prison ship. And he's like, I heard of this. I think Omni-Man's there. So he's just like, well, I'll get captured and investigate. And I think they send Anissa out, actually. And you're like, oh, well, here's a rematch between Alan and a Viltrumite. And Anissa, puts up a fight, but Alan's able to hit back now. Because the last time we saw Alan fight a Viltrumite, he got ripped apart, literally.
Murdered.
And this time, he is so strong that he just tanks her hit, acts like it knocks him out, and opens his eye to the camera to let you know, This was on purpose, guys. I'm okay.
I'm seeing now. I think Alan's so strong to the point where it's probably going to become a joke to where nothing's hurting him, and he's like, "Oh, it's just funny."
Yeah, he's probably he's a tank now, and I think that's awesome.
And Alan opening his eye to the camera reminded me of just all the kind of meta jokes that they've thrown in the season about the show.
Okay,
bit about the animating.
Yes.
When Mark meets his favorite comic book writer, and he's like, we shoot behind the head so you don't have to see the audio sync with the mouths, or sometimes we'll go to an extreme wide so you don't have to move any of the animation.
And as they're saying that, they're doing it on screen. It's just like, oh, okay, we get what you guys are saying. Like, you worked really hard and fast to get this next season out.
The fun thing about that is they do that in the comic book too, except with comic book stuff.
That's cool.
And basically the joke there is they reuse the same panel 5 times while the writer is telling him about reusing panels. Because Invincible is also a comic book. It was an indie comic. It was known for reusing panels.
So I think it speaks to some of the genius just with Robert Kirkman creating this show. This is not the first time he's taken a semi-indie comic book and made a huge show. This man created The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Which we see a bit of in this episode, or it's at least
in
alluded
the finale.
to. Whenever Mark is just getting kicked into different dimensions, he goes to this zombie dimension for a snippet of the episode.
Before we go into the finale, I want to cover one more thing from the season, and this is Mark's love life.
Oh, yeah. It's in shambles by the end.
It is in shambles. It's this thing of we're seeing that him and Amber really love each other, but ultimately it's when Anissa comes down and nearly crushes her throat where they both realize she's just a human. She's not made to be anywhere near these scenarios.
It puts things in perspective.
Mark knows if villains can come and threaten his girlfriend, he's not going to be able to save the world at the capacity that he should be able to this point. He knows that he has to make the sacrifices in order to do his job because he was given these powers from his dad at birth. He didn't choose this, but this is what he's being forced to choose. And we're also introduced to the...
I wouldn't even say it's introduced. I think I know where you're going with it. Is it Adam Eve?
Yeah.
This has been from season 1.
Yeah.
From the beginning, I was like, okay, is he choosing Amber or Adam Eve? And they introduce it in season 1, and these threads just kind of run alongside each other until we've kind of come to another head about it because of this time-traveling dimension segment of the episode.
When Engstrom puts him in a time dimension that's not his, we see another universe's Guardians of the Globe telling him, hey, we're here to help you because on our Earth, like, all of this stuff went wrong. Adam Eve has this moment where she's like, hey, I love you. And it kind of seems that she never got to tell her Mark that before maybe he turned to the Viltrum side. Who knows what went down. He was missing for 20 years, they talk about. So she's like, I never got to say I love you. And just assumes that his Adam Eve is kind of in the same predicament. Yeah. Tells Mark, hey, go tell her either you love her or you don't, but she needs to, like, move on with her life. And we get that moment on the bridge where Mark doesn't say anything about it because he just went through a breakup. It's very reasonable that he doesn't say anything about it.
I think he's also just not focused on that.
No.
And I think maybe a part of him wants to, but I think part of his character now is confliction, and he's trying to just stay safe. He's trying to limit the casualties of his life at this point. Because I especially after Anissa came down and was like, I'll destroy Amber right here if you don't meet me.
And in spite of him even potentially, further on down the line, getting a superhero girlfriend, it's like at the same time, she's still someone that can be held over your head and used as leverage in the event of, a villain wanting to get to you. At the end of the day, it's like...
Adam Eve's pretty powerful.
She is.
So I think at least she's formidable, and she doesn't, break easy per se.
Yeah.
But I think, part of this just goes back to Mark wouldn't be in this situation if it wasn't for season 1. Nolan was able to do it with Debbie because of who he was and the life he led, and then that facade dropped. Mark doesn't get to do that now.
Well, you're even introduced to Mark saying, I don't want to be like he was. He was never around. We were constantly sacrificing my father and her husband because he had to go save the world, and we felt terrible for complaining about it. And you see Amber put in this exact situation. So Mark instantly wants to shut that down because you can tell he's traumatized from not having somebody around all the time.
There is a dual-edged sword to these superhero narratives. It's either I come clean about everything and now everyone knows, including the villains, and they can threaten my life, or I lie about everything and everybody feels bad. I feel bad about keeping these secrets from people and it ends up ruining our relationships anyways, even if there isn't a real danger present.
The finale. These finales, the mid-seasons and the finales, are always insane. Some of the most crazy, show-changing shit happens in these episodes, and one of the first things I want to talk about with you guys, and it's such a popular thing nowadays. It's like, when did every superhero story go this way? I'm glad we get this one episode of it, the multiverse. Mark's literally trapped in it for a little bit and meets these alternate guardians, and this is just kind of something that happened since Flashpoint. You had the CW shows.
Marvel, really.
You had Marvel, Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
You have this happening in every bit of superhero content you see nowadays, and you kind of think, well, how does Invincible do it different? Hell, it doesn't. We see Spider-Man and Batman during these events.
Yeah.
I think this is just this one-off. This is the Invincible multiverse story. We are going to maybe deal with more of it later. It's going to come up in Ham's predictions about Season 3.
There's even a Fortnite rifle you see at one point alluding to how the Invincible characters were in Fortnite. But I think it plays into how meta the show is. I don't think they're going off brand.
That's exactly what I think. It's like, I don't think much of this other than the fact that I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It didn't take me out at any point.
This is, I think, multiverse done right, because a lot of modern comic book movies are trying to lean into the multiverse stuff. I think a lot of it has kind of been failing because they're making it too convoluted and too many plot threads with not a lot of resolution. And this is kind of like, we're doing an open and shut case on this, per se. I think it will pop up in the future.
I think it alludes
but for
to
a very
things.
specific storyline.
I'll say one missed opportunity, though, and it's probably just a rights thing. Glenn should have had a conversation with Mark. That is so missed.
That would have been great. And Stephen Yeun just voices both of them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a missed opportunity. Although I kind of liked when he was in the zombie universe. It looked cool.
It did.
It looked, if you guys have ever seen panels from the Walking Dead comic books,
I've seen a couple.
the
It looked
art
reminiscent
style
of it.
was really reminiscent of it. I thought it was really cool. Another thing that I think is potentially, this is the coolest thing for me in the finale because I'm so excited to see the end result of it. We get these bits of Nolan in the prison where he's still fighting. He mops the floor with the guards that are in there and is kind of waiting for these Viltrumites. I don't need to fight you guys because you guys know I want to bust out of here. I know y'all want to keep me here, and we would scrap until one of us dies if we tried to come to a head on that. The guards in there are literally like, hey, please don't make us fight you. We look up to you, and we have for our whole entire lives. You were the model Viltrumite at one point that everybody wanted to be. And I just cannot wait to see Nolan and Alan bust out of this place. I think it's fair to say that we all love the show. I put it up there in terms of like animated superhero shows, Batman the Animated Series,
Definitely.
Young Justice are kind of my two shows that I'm like, okay, this is like similar to those. I still think Invincible is probably way better than both of them
I think
in terms of
Invincible's
serial
great.
storytelling.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Invincible, part of it is Robert Kirkman is a lead on it, and he wrote the original source material. So you get someone who's like, I know this front to back, and I know what I would change. It's probably my favorite animated show, and it's got that edge because it's more adult. Every week I'm coming back like, what's going to happen now? And some of it I'm like, okay, that's kind of what I expected. But I'm always surprised by something. There's always a plot thread dangling that's like, when is the other shoe going to drop on this? and then the meat grinder's just going to open up, and people are going to die, and people are going to be changed brutally most of the time. It's just, whenever there's a paradigm shift in Invincible, it seems there's just a great act of violence.
And I'll say that's another thing that's one of its strengths is its pacing. I think that every ounce of screen time is used responsibly. We are progressing our characters. We have these interesting interweaving story threads, and we don't waste any time. It's like, we saw how much of a villain Omni-Man was in this past season, and we get to see him kind of feeling bad about it at the beginning of season 2, and then when we come back, we're starting to get this wraparound catharsis. Like, I think we're moving at a really good pace.
Definitely. And I mean, I know from certain events in the comics that I've heard about. I haven't read it, but I know a little bit because comics are in my wheelhouse, I guess. You get to see Mark grow up a little bit and into adulthood, I'm pretty sure. So they've got a lot of ground to cover, and I think they got a lot more seasons to go. And if everything is as interesting as it has been so far, we're eating good for a while.
Got a great show on our hands.
Change the show.
Speaking of future seasons, let's talk about, just name out a couple theories, predictions you got for season 3.
Definitely got a few. With the title cards of this episode, last season you got the blood going all over the logo, and it was yellow and blue. This season you had the blood-soaked logo, and then the red and black started falling off and revealing blue, and now the text, Invincible, is black. I think this is foreshadowing the darkest days for Mark coming, because in the comics he gets a black and blue suit to replace his yellow, blue, and black suit. And that kind of goes through Mark's darkest storylines, the Invincible War, which is kind of teased by Angstrom Levy in this final episode. You get to see flashes of all his other versions that got put in his brain.
All the other
and they're Invincibles. It seems that every other Invincible in the multiverse
is a terrible
evil.
Person.
But I know Mark basically has to fight all the worst parts of himself in these evil alternate universe versions of him, and it's gonna get brutal probably, and maybe even Mark's gonna quit being invincible for a little bit, because I know there's this character that pops up in season 2 who joins the Guardians of the Globe, Bulletproof. I think maybe we get a little bit of time at the beginning of like a season 4 where Bulletproof is invincible and Mark is kind of recuperating somewhere, maybe.
And it's, again, like you said earlier, a really great motif for Mark just battling his demons and his strength, which just continues to be bottomless,
especially
it seems.
After the finale. The finale really opens up himself being like, I need to control myself.
After the first 2 seasons, it feels like the show's very much about perspective.
Oh, and something else that could happen, Oliver is going to grow up.
He's going to play some
faster
He's aging faster.
So, what's he going to do? Is he going to become like Mark's sidekick or something like that?
And one thing we did gloss over in the recap, the whole reason Oliver has to come back is because Ray Seahorn's character ages to the point of being this old bug lady by the time Mark has helped them clean up their homeworld.
Before he's even left, she's an old woman.
She can't take care of Oliver anymore, and she knew that was going to happen, but she thought that she was going to have Nolan.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and without Nolan, Oliver has nothing but his brother, who's coincidentally there. So, yeah, I really have no clue where Oliver's gonna play in, but you can only imagine. He's already a big-looking baby, you know? You can only imagine he's gonna be a big, strong hero when he grows up, And he's gonna be able to help Mark in this war.
Yeah, if he's grows up to be this Viltrumite with this anti-Viltrum Empire sentiment, he's gonna be one of these leading. I just think of like an Alan, Mark, Oliver team up in the future just leading this war.
Let me flip the script a little bit, though. I'm not convinced that we'll see Oliver grow up.
There is also that.
I thought maybe Angstrom was going to get him. Truly.
Or Debbie.
I am terrified of Debbie or Oliver dying right now. Truly. Like, that's going to be what sends Mark over the edge. At that point, if something happens to one of them, I think he's going to, cut off personal relationships and just go to space with Alan and be full on in on the war.
Mark's eventually got to go off and train with a Yoda-like character to come back and defeat all the evil threats that are posed against him.
Because he's not ready.
Yeah, he's just not. And I think that's kind of part of what he's deciding at the end of season 2 is, I've got to hone this.
And now just having to come to terms with, I'm really strong, I've got to get in control of my power, but at the same time I need to be stronger to defeat these unstoppable forces.
Right, and it's kind of one of those things where he doesn't have it in him yet to do stuff like that. He killed Angstrom, who broke his mom's arm and nearly hurt Oliver. He killed him and lost his mind.
Yes.
Covered in blood, is talking out loud to himself about what he just did. Can't wait to see what season 3 holds. I'm already waiting on it, and it just ended last week. So we'll see how quick we can get there.
I know Kirkman said he doesn't want to split up a season again. The goal is to have one season per year. Future prediction: it's still going to be great.
It'll be good.
The future is bright for animated television when Invincible comes on and there's a new season on Amazon Prime.
I'll say this is, by far my favorite American animated television show, especially going on right now. I can't wait for season 3. We can't wait to be back here reviewing it. There's a lot more stuff going on at the Studio 24 YouTube channel, on TikTok, on Instagram. Go check us out. Our short film, They Took Her, just came out. Still fresh. Go watch it now. Leave a like. Leave a comment on what you thought. Comment your predictions on this video. We want to hear from more of the viewers. I want to know what people think about Season 3. And if you've read the comic books, you can keep your mouth shut. Or just say that the comic books are also cool. Do what you want. Maybe I'll have to do some selected reading in the comment section.
Yeah, if you want to talk about the comic books, try not to spoil anything going ahead. Maybe drop some differences between the storylines that Season 2 covered
that we've already seen. Yeah.
But on the thread of dropping a comment, we now have Studio Cinema Saturday as well as Studio Television Tuesday.
Yeah, Television Tuesday. We've got World Wrestling Wednesday that's coming out where you can get caught up on your wrestling content. We're going to have a lot going on. Be sure to check it out. We'll see you there.